Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the next episode in the No Turning Back series. Today, Stan McChrystal and I have a great conversation with Roz Brewer. Roz is a truly exceptional leader in today's industry. She grew up as a scientist inside of Kimberly-Clark, then transitioned in her career over to management and leadership positions. She ended up as the CEO of Sam's Club, and a few years ago shifted over and is now the COO at Starbucks. So you can imagine the pressure and intensity of her role right now. I often tell people you should have a series of leaders out there that you're always keeping an eye on. Some that you know personally who are mentors, others that you watch in the distance. I've had the good fortune of spending a little bit of time with Roz over the years, and she is one of those leaders for me. I love seeing her actions in the press, the way that she communicates with her organization. So today was a really special time to be able to go deep with her. And Stan and I spend time with her talking about a few critical areas. One, how do you communicate with such a large organization in such a public limelight as Starbucks during a moment of crisis like this? And then building on that, how do you adjust your decision making in moments like this? So you provide clarity to those inside your organization and outside folks that are monitoring how you're going to adjust during this crisis. And her answers there are brilliant, all about creating very simple and transferable models. And I think you'll really enjoy that. And then we also spend a little bit of time diving into her approach on mentorship, how she was groomed up herself by senior folks and how she spends time focused on that for the next generation of leaders, which is something we believe in deeply here at McChrystal Group. And it's critical for the future of leadership. So hope you enjoy this discussion. Like I said, Roz is an amazing one-off leader, absolutely worth paying attention to. Thank you. So Roz, thank you so much for taking time to have a chat with Stan McChrystal and myself today on the No Turning Back series. Stan and I, aside from our work together at McChrystal Group, also teach a leadership seminar. And I want somebody to write your current biography so that we can teach you as a case study to the class, or at least we'll get you up to meet with our students at some point, because your leadership journey is inspiring and incredible. And we'd love to start there, because you started in the science side and then navigated into leadership positions, and now you've led at the highest levels in corporate space. So can you talk a little bit about what that was like and the decisions you maybe made along the way?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for doing this. I've been looking forward to this conversation and a chance to reconnect with the both of you again. But in terms of my leadership and my journey, it has been an interesting one. Started off as an organic chemist, and even in high school was a STEM major in high school, chemistry major in college. And I never knew how impactful having a STEM background would be for me. It's been all about the analytics. It's made me a little bit more of an agile learner. And in many cases, I've had to teach myself a lot of things. And I don't have an MBA, which is interesting for the business work that I do. But I think I've been grounded in the sciences, and that's been helpful. But the transitions for me have been pretty methodical. But the one thing that I didn't do is I never had my eyes really set on, I wanted to be a fill in the blank. It just sort of got there. And I was very attached to my values, understanding what kinds of environments I wanted to work in. I was very deliberate about that. I've always been very giving to the community. And so I wanted a company that supported me doing things outside of the company as well as inside. And then I always wanted to do meaningful, impactful work that I knew I could maybe move an issue while I'm moving the business, and enable me to bring my head and my heart together. And so I've been fortunate. Kimberly-Clark was that kind of company. Walmart was that kind of company. Starbucks is absolutely that kind of company. And then the board service that I have had is actually given me a chance to be pretty impactful and bring my whole self to many conversations.
Let me ask, if I could, because you've had such an impressive background of jobs, and they are simultaneously jobs where you have to lead people, you have to develop people, you have to do all those things, but you have to produce results at the same time.
Yes.
So there's that constant tension. Can you talk about how you think about that now?
Yes. That is an interesting dichotomy there because, in most cases, you could actually trade off one for the other. I have learned that in order for the business results to be truly great and sustainable, you can't leave people behind, your teams behind, the community behind. It has to all come together. And the times that I actually have focused more on the results than I have the whole picture, my results have been very temporary. They've lasted for a couple of quarters. I answered the right question. I far exceeded every plan. I made quarterly bonus. I've done those things. But sustainable results, quarter over quarter, year over year, creating roadmaps, stretch plans, transformations, those are only if you get the opportunity to think about how you're impacting the people that work for you, the people that you serve as a customer, and the community that has to follow you. And there's many examples of that. I mean, the experience we're having right now with COVID, if we really thought about our bottom line, we'd have no one working in our stores today. And we've made some very deliberate decisions there. And I think as we can see right now, it's likely going to be some of the best decisions we've ever made in the history of the company.
That's good.
Roz, can you talk a little bit about just your own theory around communication, because it's so critical now, obviously, but you don't get to where you are if you haven't developed sort of a multi-pronged approach to how you communicate with small teams and larger teams and entire organizations. And I'm sure it's not just one vector that you think about. How do you approach that, especially in an organization as global and just expansive as Starbucks?
So my theory on communications is first and foremost, two things. One is frequency, and the second one is transparency. And so in terms of frequency, you can never say too little. And for me, what I try my best to practice is to bring people along in the thinking very early on, and to never create a plan, an opportunity without, having the masses follow you. So, I am a wide open book. My communication style is very consistent. If I'm talking to the barista on the floor, it's not too different than, the way I might talk to my senior leaders, just because the more clear you are and the more you simplify the message, everybody gets it and you get the alignment. So, and I do that frequently. So for me, Chris, one of the things that I really do is if I do nothing else, I am talking about my plans. I'm talking about moving the company forward, and I do that frequently. One of the things we're doing right now in this virtual world is I'm doing multiple step level meetings. And so instead of talking to the teams that report to my team, I'm really down at the basic levels of the company, constantly just talking to them about what's on their minds and telling them about how I see the future. It's always proven to be effective for me. And then in terms of transparency, I probably go right up to the limit of oversharing. And by that, I mean, as a chief operating officer of a company, I have to be very clear about what we want to tell the street and what we want to tell internally. But I try and bring those together. And if I have a conversation with the street, I immediately get back to my team and tell them, here's what I talked about, here's what we're saying, here's what I need your help on. So it's about transparency and frequency, and making sure that everybody knows that they play a role in, the work that we're doing, and communicate that pretty frequently.
Can I build on that? Because it's fascinating, and just given when you talk about talking all the way down in remote sessions, multiple steps down, critical in a time like this. There's so much uncertainty. We try to advise executives, multiply your nervousness by 2 at every layer of the org chart, and that's what your people on the ground feel like. Okay. How has that been received? Like, that's a new muscle for a lot of younger folks to say, wow, I'm actually in conversation with the COO. How do you get them into a space where those are productive discussions? Yeah,
so I love your analogy there about the multiple of 2, because actually whenever I'm feeling anxious about the business, I have to get out of my seat, get in my car, and go drive to one of my stores. And then I either test it out and say, is this really happening? Is this my, what's overtaking my thinking? And it plays out for me. And so I actually truly believe what you just said. If I'm anxious, they're 20 times. So as an example, today I started off my day in stores. I went through a drive-through line. They recognized me. I jumped out the car. with workout clothes, went in the store. They let me in because the store wasn't open. And I talked to the partners, talked to a couple of my baristas who are expecting, talked to them about their pregnancy, talked to the store manager about his anxiety he's feeling. We're opening stores this week. And we just chatted for a while. And as I was leaving, he stopped me and he said, he asked me some questions about himself. And he said, he sent me a note later and said, I didn't think you'd be in the store. And then I didn't think we'd talk about what we talked about. And we never talked about the business. I never talked to him about what I saw in the store because it was about the two of us. And so I did that because I had been feeling anxious about, we're opening stores. Are we keeping everybody safe? Are the customers feeling comfortable coming in? Are the stores, doing what they need to do? And lo and behold, it played out and we had a very good conversation. So for me, it's always, I am only a microcosm of the people who work for me. And so if I'm feeling it, they are too. And I try and address what's happening in my own life to theirs because there's very little difference. We're we all have the same values and we think we think in the same light of the company. So we need to have these transparent conversations.
I think it's such an important point, and especially now where there really is, an element of risk in all those environments, and to see leaders at the front line. I'm going to ask Stan maybe to walk through his theory on. He was known for spending a lot of time in that same vein. I'm going to get as close to the troops as possible. Got on operations with them, which was really unique for your equivalent on the battlefield, a very senior person. Stan, can you sort of build on that a little bit?
Well, as I'm sure you've lived, Roz, there were several things about going out. First is you've got to show the flag. You've got to show you're willing to be out there with people. But then, of course, that's where you figure out how it's really done. You don't figure that out in the headquarters. Let me ask you a question, if I could, because now we're in uncharted territory. I mean, we know we're in a unique crisis. I certainly don't know exactly where it's going to go, and I certainly don't know exactly what we ought to do about it at the individual level, the firm level, or at the national level. How do you communicate to your team the fact that the future is very uncertain? Because we're sort of raised with the idea where when we get senior, we're supposed to have the full answer.
Right. I get asked that question a lot right now. How do I feel about the future and what's next after what's next? What I commit to when I'm in those conversations is to tell them what I do know. And every day we are actually monitoring customer sentiment right now, what's on the minds of everyone, what's on the minds of the people that work for us. And we're feeding that back to the people who work for us so that they can understand, first of all, you're not in this alone. Everyone is feeling the same uncertainty, but here's how people are mobilizing themselves. And we share information from other industries. So then this, the information piles on each other. So at least you're in the know of what the reality is right now. The other thing is that we're just transparent to say we don't know what we don't know, but here's what we're going to do about it. And so we explain to them where the company is financially. It's interesting that right now what we're doing is really breaking down in the most simplest terms where we are, because we're seeing so many companies go bankrupt. People, we have people who are not close to the financial terms in our company asking us, do we have money? How are you going to, is the bank going to give us any loans? How many loans do we have? And so you really have to break that down for them and say, hey, listen, we've got a balance sheet. You remember a couple of years ago when we, closed, 400 stores? Do you remember that? That cleared out our balance sheet. And guess what? It freed up some cash for us. So simplifying those conversations, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. But it's all about really being sharing as much as you possibly can, simplifying the message, being on the front line with them. And also showing that you're vulnerable too, because there's some things that I don't know. All I can do is help us prepare for the future. And I want to give everyone that works for Starbucks the confidence that we are trying to prepare for worst case. So we've built some scenarios: worst case, mid case, and best case. And we're going to follow all those, and we're going to talk about those three scenarios constantly. And so they'll know if things get terrible, they'll know, and they can make personal decisions, or they can say, I'm going to hang in there with you because I think I know where you're going. So we're trying to, give them those scenario builds that are simple enough for them to understand what might happen here.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm personally a huge believer in wherever you can make simple boundary rules, right? And it frames, the more complex the situation gets, the easier it is for people to say, okay, this is how they're going to make those decisions. Has the intensity of this period, especially an organization like yours or you personally, you're under such broad public scrutiny with the way you make decisions. Have you adjusted the way you communicate decisions down, or the way you think about framing decisions to your teams?
We have thought a lot about that, and the way we have been transferring those decisions, because you are exactly right. They want to know how you are thinking about a situation. Not that they actually don't mind that you don't have all the answers. They mind that you don't know what you're doing, right? They want that confidence. So one of the things we've been doing is obviously bringing them closer into the fold with more information than we've ever given them before, having frequent conversations, but also too, helping them get to know who we are as leaders even more, because they're attaching to who we are, not what we are right now. People are looking for help, survivorship, knowledge, information, leadership in the smallest and biggest of places. And they need to know that if it's not my family that I can hold on to, my physician that I can hold on to, is there anything I can hold on to? And we're trying to help the folks in our company know that they can hold on to us as long as they possibly can.
That's terrific. Let me ask a question now just about sort of how you manage your personal life. And what I'm really talking about here is, I used to tell people who were making battalion level command that they now had the Midas touch, that everything they touched would be better than if they didn't, but they couldn't touch everything.
Right.
So how do you prioritize what you do with work, but also what you do in your personal life, so that you get the most done and the things that are most important?
Yeah, so Stan, I have to admit that I still struggle a bit with that. But I learned not too long ago a very important word called no. And, there's a lot of things I want to do, and there's likely a lot of things I can do. But then I've got to make sure that there's some priorities that I have to fulfill. And actually, this period of time that we're in has helped me prioritize, first of all, family, because the stress of this pandemic has put pressure on every aspect of my life. My 25-year-old moved back from New York temporarily. He's got a intense job himself. He's 24/7 in his job. My daughter is, online schooling right now, distance learning, stressful. So we're all spread out over the house. But the priorities for us in this house is to come together, over a meal and have conversations that we haven't had before. But setting those priorities, first of all, is saying no, what I'm not going to do, what I'm going to delay to a different part of my life and time. And that was hard for me, but the power of no is very effective. The other thing too is setting personal strategies for myself. There's nonprofit things I'd like to do, but it's not a space that I'm genuinely passionate about. Could impact it, but I'm not passionate, so I'm not going to do it. And so, I have to really consistently follow my passions. And when I do that, I do my best work. I do it fast and quick and can turn it around and have impact and move on to the next thing. But I try and follow my passions, prioritize my family, my health. I'm working out more than I've worked out before. It gives me a lot of energy to keep going and gets my head on straight every day. I meditate every morning. That's a priority for me. And then I try and get sleep.
How long has meditation been a regular practice for you?
Actually, for about the last 2 years, it has become a priority. I was a little bit hit or miss years past, but then I've been pretty consistent for the last 2 years or so, and then just really intense right now. That's
great. Can I pivot just slightly, because I'd love to get your thoughts on just mentorship in general. I'm assuming you had some great mentors as you were coming up, and you've probably developed your own theory on how to go about that. I'm sure you get approached constantly to mentor others. What's your theory on that? How do you approach it? What have you seen work well? So it's been such an advantage for me in my life that it is something that I try and prioritize each and every day. I try to do a little bit of something. I love text messages because
you never know how you're touching someone's life or what's happening with them. So, there's so many different ways to mentor people these days. It is a priority. I've had great mentors. Indra Nui's fantastic mentor. Bill Simon, my former boss at Walmart, fantastic. Still keep in touch with today. It's about nurturing those relationships, though. It is a two-way deal, and you cannot pull too much from that relationship and not give something back. And so I think it's a two-way position that we should take on mentoring. I prioritize it. My mentees, some look like me and some don't. And I try to do the best I can to keep in touch. But I tell you, I think going forward, I think mentorship is going to be even more critical, because I think people are going to have to look at themselves and decide what they want to do next. I think the career landscape is going to look dramatically different post-COVID. And I have a feeling that I'll be talking to a lot of my mentees, I have been, about what's next in their lives. What's so interesting, each one of my mentees that I talk to right now, they are really thinking about doing something that is so much more impactful to the world than just their day job. And that excites me. I think that is going to be one of the most positive outcomes out of this entire situation, is the kind of humans that are going to grow from this COVID environment.
Well, you just answered part of the question I was about to ask you, but I'm going to ask you to expand it. Once we get beyond COVID-19 and we're in a different society, and I think we all know it will be some different, what's going to be better than it is now, or than it was before?
Yes. I actually think what's going to be better is the opportunity for people to take this time of remote work, and in some instances downtime, career change time, and really get inside themselves and understand what motivates them, and come out of this being the best human being that they could ever be. I think that it's going to teach us the importance of fixing the inequities in our society. I think a lot about COVID and think about the communities that it has actually impacted. And a lot of those are African-American communities. And it's not because of just their health issues. It's because of the living arrangements. It's because of, the lack of education, the lack of exposure to equitable healthcare. All of those things need to be addressed. And I think it's now shining a very bright light on what creates inequities in our society. So I think that there's going to be some really positive outcomes out of this. It's going to be thought leadership. I think we'll have some of the best minds after it. The one thing about COVID is that it is universal. It's impacted all of us, some disproportionately, but we'll look into the why. And I'm encouraged by that. We'll be a different society after this is over. I'm hopeful, optimistic. We'll be better leaders, better humans, better people, better family members. And, you have to find the good in every crisis. And hopefully we're also searching for that right now.
Absolutely.
Roz, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. Great discussion. It means more than you can imagine for folks to hear from leaders that are in the thick of it, like you are right now, and absolutely leading from the front. So we wish you and your family the best of luck, and your organization and teams as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Stan.
Thanks, Roz. Take care.
Take great care. Bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for spending the time. I hope you got as much out of that as we did. Like I said, Roz Brewer, absolutely amazing leader, leading from the front at a critical time in just an iconic organization. We appreciate you dialing into No Turning Back, and stay tuned for the next episodes.